Hello everybody. I guess we did a talk 2 weeks ago, and it's always interesting when you start that talk and you think, oh God, I wonder what this closing talk is going to be like. Are we going to be happy? What have we got done? You know, what have we achieved over this time? And the thing is with these residency periods like Lighthouse, it is just work. Like we're work, talk, work. I mean, downstairs was like a big bloody contagion soup, wasn't it? With so much stuff going on and you know, so many people and so many things happening all at the same time. So it was a really amazing time. So the talk today, I'm going to, for those who don't really know much about the project, we're going to do a brief introduction about the project and what it's about. Just going to spend 5 minutes about that, and then I'm going to mostly talk about what we've achieved over the last 2 weeks, and we're going to get Natacha to talk for a while, and Michael's going to talk for a while, and I'm going to try and force Michael to talk as well. So Chameleon is a project that explores emotional contagion, and I've done, this is probably my 5th talk here, so sometimes I feel like I am repeating myself. I guess if you're here, you probably know a bit about the work. But emotional contagion is this idea of mimicry. We mimic each other, and this sort of mimicry is the dance of life, really. It's a search for empathy, and we do it, I guess, to survive as social groups, you know. And it happens unconsciously, you know, a lot without us knowing about it. And we actually have a really great mimicry expert in the audience today who's going to take part in discussion, Harry Witchell over there. So he's going to talk about mimicry and extend more on that, aren't you, Harry? But see, what happens, we imitate people. So if someone smiles at you, you smile back. And then the second thing is, you know, often we fake it, often. And interestingly, they find the same things highlight in the brain when we actually fake. Not to the same extent, but it's this idea of how emotional contagion takes place. So in about 2006, I started to think about the Chameleon Project, and I was an artist-in-resident at the Institute of Neurology in London, and I was working with some really great people. And I thought, well, now's the time to really try and pull a project together that, you know, we can really investigate over a couple of years. And I thought, oh, a 2-year project, that's so long. And it's just been like a blink, you know, and we're nearing the end of the project now, and now I'm trying to, you know, sort of make it happen and, you know, deliver something, and it's just happened a little bit too fast. But we have Hugo Critchley, who's at BSMS in Sussex, and I'm really interested in, I've been working with Hugo for 5 years, but it's great physiology, neuroscience, you know, just what happens to the body when we emote, body and the brain. Chris Frith, amazing social neuroscientist, he's much working on the emotional algorithms of the Chameleon Project. I transfer emotions, you transfer emotions. How does this happen? We have Raina and Rosalind Picard and Yusuf Kashef and Abdel and Marwa, and they're all working on the face reading technology, and we're training that to work with the key emotional states for the Chameleon Project. And the key emotional states are actually the universal emotions. At the moment we're just looking at sadness, happiness, disgust, surprised, neutral, and happiness, and not fear, which is really annoying for Harry. And Bruno Averbeck is a great neuroscientist who has been developing the learning algorithms. Nadia Berthouse and Matt and Kimberly. Kim's been down here for the last 5 days, and basically they work out how people are responding to the project, which then feeds back into the next development of the project. We have Gordon Brand, who just walked in. Actually, I wanted him to take part in this talk, but maybe he can take part in discussion. Gordon, what happened to Gordon? All right, hey Gordon. And he's from Seoul, and then a big part of the Lighthouse residency has been Pixy and Natacha, and sorry.
Should we get them in chat?
I have a new name now.
Pixy, Natacha and Michael, who have been developing Pixy, which is a project I saw in Banff, actually. We were doing a liminal screen residency, and they first showed Pixy, and they presented it as this project that they really needed other video artists to, you know, work with content. And I just thought, wow, I wonder how this would work. How would these 2 projects come together for the Chameleon Project? I thought what they were doing with the screen, like they were breaking it apart. You could pull so much image from the face and still read an emotion from it. Could we do that? So these are the sort of experiments experimentations we've been doing. We had a little time in, a lot of emails back and forth, a bit of time in Paris talking about it. So there's sort of three key parts to this project: creating video databases. I've been travelling all around the world, shooting different people, emoting different emotional states, and I think some people who have been part of my database are actually in the audience tonight, so maybe today, so they could maybe join in discussion as well. And creating face reading technology and an emotional coded video engine. And it does this: cameras, looking at face, assessing that data with the neuroscientists, and then triggering a portrait. So that's pretty much how the guts of Chameleon work. So Lighthouse. So Lighthouse has been about, for the Chameleon Project, Lighthouse has been about exploring iteration 8. And so we started this in January in 2008, and I did it out in steps when I saw I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and I did that for a couple of reasons. One, for me to really understand what I was dealing with, and also to create a visual language for the neuroscientists and all the other collaborators to understand, and also to create milestones for everybody. So we'd always try and deliver on these set dates. So we'd always have exhibitions, so we'd always have to work towards something, then assess it, and then move on. So it's been a busy period. And we started off with a short film, that sort of moved into a performance tool, then that moved into really exploring the emotional code, and then that moved into sort of contextualising it using text, and that moved into emotional contagion in groups, and that's prototype 6, that's at the Natural History Museum at the moment. Then prototype 7, which was what we first did at Lighthouse, that was about bringing in the emotion face reading technology, and here we are at prototype 8, which for me was very much about how we can explore more sculptural ways of interacting with video. So, aim at Lighthouse, shoot more portraits, further develop Pixy with Natacha and Roussel to see how it could integrate itself with the Chameleon Project, extend the screens with the rapid prototyping group, extend the video engine to drive 2 screens, which halves our technology costs, develop the face reading technologies, and over the last 10 days we've been trying to get happiness to work a lot better. And Kim's been down, who has been assessing everyone. You know, she was here for about 4 days in the end, wasn't she? She was quite here a lot, asking people questions about how they were responding to the work and what was wrong and what was good, and that information is always interesting. So this was the basic studio setup we had. And I asked different people to come in, and I think I shot 5 portraits over this time, and then it's sort of a slow process. I know, Helen came in, and Helen's, it might have been her 4th shoot, I think, and this was Ron came in, and he's 86 years old, and then I get them to talk about it, write about it afterwards, about how they felt about it, and we'll talk more about that process a little bit later on, but this is some of what they felt about being in the studio that I felt was quite interesting. And some of these shoots they get really quite intense. Actually, it's really an amazing process to go through. Really amazing, as someone who can just sit there and listen and shoot and it's quite interesting how some emotions really felt. And then some emotions they felt more prone to sort of act through. A lot of people, feel like it's a big counselling session. And it's really interesting, the more that you shoot someone, the more that the whole body language changes, the more their whole face, it looks like a completely different face actually when I look back at the footage and try to edit it all together, the more relaxed that they become with me. And so this is prototype 8, and I guess, here I'm just looking at Naumann, Woodisco and Tony Alsler, and I'm just looking at the way that they were producing video, which was sort of the catalyst to start exploring this. And this is some of the earlier ideas that I put forward. This is some of the testing we've done with Gordon, with Michael at Fabrica back in June. And then this came to the next shapes. Can we just start projecting on, different surfaces, what that's going to be? So these are the first things that we tried last week. And then we started to go into that more concave type of surface and projecting behind it. And then we started to layer the video, put perspex on perspex, and try and play with how two different concave surfaces can meet and reveal an image and blur out part of the image. And so there's parts of that I like. I like about that is the physicality, the sort of intimacy of the image. The portrait head is a lot smaller. Interestingly, when the last one, we then got this sort of back reflection, which we had no idea that we'd ever get, but it's quite interesting. And so we have, something downstairs that we want to pursue. We're going to go back to Solon on Friday and have another go and see how, probably make it a little bit bigger, see what other surfaces we can play with. And we were talking about how we can embed the camera actually into the actual screen itself as well. And I quite like it because it's a little bit more painterly, or it's a little bit more gentle than, just a straight projection. Sort of this hiding and revealing is sort of quite good. And on the other side, in the other room, then we had Pixy being built, which is an intense process. It's not a light thing to take on when you say, come and, get images moving through a Pixy screen. Actually, a lot more difficult than I ever thought. And actually, I think our original plan was like last Thursday, we're going to have 2 screens working or something like that. And, we might see the second screen working today. The process is intensive, but at the same time, Mikkel and Natasha are going to talk a lot more about the process, but what I'm going to just show you here, I guess, a bit about the documentation, the busyness of the room that was happening over the residency. We had Connor and Hayley in from what's that group thing? Some school thing. Loops in, and they were helping, build the screen, and we had Jane McGrath in a master's student who's looking at maybe doing her dissertation on the project, so she was around a lot, also writing on a blog that we've been posting. We had Carl Broom in, who's a sociologist from Sussex, and he was really interesting to have in the room and discuss ideas with, and he was a great builder too, I think, just really helping you guys a lot. So basically it was busy, and I don't know how much Mikkel has slept over the last...
But not the last 2 days.
No, I just don't know how you do it. But of course, I hope some of you have seen the screen downstairs, and there's some really beautiful things about the screen that really worked. And I think in the discussion time, then we'll discuss together about what we thought worked and what we thought didn't work, and what we'd want to take forward and what we didn't want to take forward. And here's Kim. She was in the other room, getting everyone to sit down, look at a camera, and get the work to react to you. And what she did is, here's her. I told her to write down a little bit of what she was studying. So she gets in. She gets people to take a okay, well, what mood are you in right now? Sort of scale, and also gets them to fill out an emotional contagion sort of scale as well, so we can work out how people are feeling before they enter the space. And then she puts them through the process. And downstairs on the first week, she was interested in the different portraits. Some spoke, some didn't speak, some were half speaking and not, which were the ones that people were going to relate to the most. And then afterwards, then she gets their mood scale and stuff, and then she interviews them about the process. And some interesting things come back from that. And I'm not really able to, we'll probably start to see a bit more of this data around October time. But here are some of the quotes she just put forward. To me, which is, I guess I've just sort of grabbed this because it's just something that I hadn't really thought about too much. And what's been interesting about this is how much everyone's talked about how, and even in the shoots, that it didn't end here. They spent their days actually talking about emotions, which was something which I really wanted for the piece, but I hadn't thought about it. It was just, and I hadn't got that sort of feedback back from it. And I guess that's what these periods are good when you're here for 2 weeks, that you get the feedback coming back and feedback coming back. When you work in your studio on your own a lot, you sort of look at the work in your studio. It's hard to get a sense of that. And then, I guess, we developed the problems, all these problems we're having, and I mean, they're developing some amazing technology at MIT, but there's quite a few problems as well. And I think this is quite interesting, how people try and play with what they wouldn't do in social situations. If someone's sad, for example, you wouldn't start laughing at them. Whereas in the studio, they do that, and then also actually say how bad they felt about it, that they were pushing which is quite interesting, because literally it's a computer. So these are sort of the notes that I sort of picked up from her about how we'd need to start thinking about it in the future, and the problems that have come up. And what also has come up, which I'd never really thought of, is how much people align themselves with personalities of the characters. This is something that I'd never really thought about. And quickly what I'm going to do now is just talk a little bit about what, because my scientific collaborators aren't here today, so I'm just sort of going to put a little bit about why they would want to work with an artist. And these are some quotes that have come through back and forth this is one that's from Chris. And I guess what he's saying is that we're able to develop new tools that he would never be able to do within science. He's allowed to experiment, basically, and which will give him new tools to work with. And this is from Hugo, and he sort of comes back with the idea that not only working with an artist has allowed sort of new tools, more sort of visceral databases and stuff like that, but I guess I also introduce him to a lot of collaborators as well. So he starts working with different people, way beyond me, but I'll say, oh, well, Hugo, I've met this guy. And I guess as artists, you tend to do that. You tend to knock on a lot more doors, and when I was at the Institute of Neurology, you'd have people 3 doors down from each other doing really similar stuff, but not talking to each other at all. So as an artist, you tend to be a conduit between people. And for Ros Picard as well. And Ros Picard and the MIT team are developing the face reading technology for its use in autism, so they're very much interested in how the databases can then be used in these circumstances. And from Nadia as well, she works a lot with pain and emotion.